But there's a little pitfall. It's called use for payment, and the alligators are snapping at our heels because the new PPS assessment has to be used for payment with an ARD set for on or before the last day of the COT observation period in order to be able to reset those COT windows. If the assessment set for on or before the day 7 of the COT observation period, but it's not used for payment, then completing this assessment does not impact the COT ARD calendar. So we need to know which days each assessment pays. So the 5-day pays the first 14, the 14 days starts paying on day 15, the 30-day begins payment on day 31. So let's say at the 30-day, the resident discharges on day 31. We don't get paid for the day of discharge, so the 30-day assessment is not used for payment. Even if I use day 27 and I completed it and transmitted it and it was accepted, if that resident discharges on day 31 or day 30, the 30-day is not used for payment, and if I didn't do the required COT, then it becomes a missed assessment. So here's an example of this. So day 20, I have a COT checkpoint, didn't need to do a COT, and 7 days later, I'm in the window for my 30-day, and my rug dropped. And so I'm going to be smart, and I'm going to just do a standalone 30-day on day 27 instead of doing a COT. Unfortunately, my resident discharged on day 30, and if I did a standalone 30-day, I would be provider liable for all the days back beginning on day 21 because it's the days that COT would have affected the payment. So to prevent the provider liability, I always recommend that you open your COT in addition to scheduled assessments when you're in the window. And also CMS recommends you don't transmit your PPS assessment that 30-day until you know that the resident has remained in the facility long enough to require that scheduled assessment for payment. If you haven't transmitted it yet, you're still in that encoding period, you could change the reason for assessment before you shipped it off to be the COT instead. You can strike through then if I've opened all these MDSs that I don't need, and then I can go back and strike them out once the resident, I know they're still here on day 32, for example, and wait to transmit until they're safely in the COT window. The problem time that I always see is Friday. So if Friday is day 7 of my COT window and my resident is on, getting therapy, and therapy in the morning says, I think we'll be fine. If I don't open a COT and the therapy doesn't get back to me saying, hey, we didn't make the minutes today, I go home on Friday thinking everything's fine, come back on Monday and find out it's not. I am outside of my 2-day flexibility window, and I now have 3 days of default. So I would always open a COT if I have a Friday COT checkpoint, just to make sure that I'm not going to end up with late assessments and so forth.